How's it going, guys? It's Cole from See Through Panel, showing off East of West by Jonathan Hickman and Nick Dragotta, published by Image Comics. And this hardcover, the first of three, retails for $50 US. I am going to be talking about the entire 45-issue series, although this book itself just covers 15 issues. As I said, there are three of them. In terms of spoilers, I'm not going to be giving away too much, but towards the end I'll give a spoiler warning, and I want to talk about the ending and some of the stuff that kind of goes through the entire book. So if you haven't read it, I'll let you know when to cut out, and if you have or you're not worried about spoilers, you can stay for the whole thing. So before I get too deep, let's do the credits. This book was written by Jonathan Hickman, art by Nick Dragotta, colors by Frank Martin, and letters by Russ Wooten. You're going to hear dog sounds for a second. It is a sprawling, how do you even classify something like this? Western, sci-fi, epic, kind of political, operatic, huge. I mean, it's, think sci-fi with a Western skin over it in an alternate history America. That's pretty much what it boils down to. The story follows, first of all, the four horsemen of the apocalypse: famine, I'll show them here, famine, war, conquest, and death, who we see only a few issues later, who are essentially hurtling towards the end of the world, trying to bring the end of the world into being. And then we follow these leaders of various nations in this alternate America who are referred to as chosen, because they too are trying to usher about the end of the world, trying to bring it into being. And death is essentially trying to stop it in his own kind of strange way, while the other horsemen and the chosen are basically trying to make it happen. So there's a little push and pull there, all with a kind of science fiction technology level, although it's kind of like post-Civil War aesthetic, with a little Western thrown in there, or a lot of Western, as you can see from Death having revolvers and a cowboy hat. Overall, it's just an aesthetic that I really like, and so the Western kind of vibe it gives off really got me. But what you stay for, you come in for the Western, but you stay for the huge, sprawling, operatic story of tons, dozens of characters in a cast, a lot of political intrigue, underhanded schemes, war, assassination attempts, love stories, and just a ton of like interplay between all these characters that you become really attached to. The fantastical elements like the Horsemen of Death, or the Horsemen of the Apocalypse, really add just another layer to things that are already so complex that to be honest, this is my third or fourth take on this video, because the story goes for 45 issues. It's so dense and full of characters and full of plot threads that run for so many issues that I can't really cover everything. Overall, I would just call this one of the most epic stories I've ever read, because Jonathan Hickman, every line he writes is a Hail Mary. It's all rule of cool. It's supposed to be the coolest thing ever. The story comes second to how cool everything is, and that works for me. I mean, I'm a mark for that. And then Nick Dragotta, as you can see here with this Tsutomu Nihei kind of mega structure, just comes in and makes everything look gorgeous. I will say he gets better over this course of the series, but he starts so strong. The character designs, you've probably already seen some of them, are really interesting to look at. Everything's so defined. You never are questioning anything. In terms of visual storytelling, it's never muddled or muddy. It's always so clear what's happening, who's in the scene. The dialogue always comes off correctly for which character is talking. The only confusing elements come from how complex the plot is, and that's a good thing for me, because I think a story of this scale, the plot should be complex. It runs for 45 issues. There's so many things that start and stop, and so many different narratives going through this thing, that also these pages, real quick, the gray text, it's really hard to read for you guys. It's not as bad in person. It makes it so much more epic. It's just Jonathan Hickman throwing badass one-liners at you, pretty much. But yeah, all the different plot threads going through this thing. The story is complex, and the world building itself takes some getting used to. There's a little bit of a learning curve there to understand this alternate history that's happening in the book, what's different from our world, what the kind of circumstances are that made all this happen. But once you understand things, you understand the different nations, the different motivations for the characters. Everything makes perfect sense. It's almost never confusing until you get to the ending, and I'll get to that later because the ending leaves some questions for me. But overall, I love this story. I have not read anything more grandiose than this. It's just the dialogue is always so cool. As I said, everything's just so cool, and that could be kitschy or that could be childish, but it's so well done. It's got such a nice polish to it that everything feels so clean and so well organized. And Hickman's planning is well known. All of his stories, he's got really intense kind of plans for how everything's going to go, and he knows at the start how it's going to end, and he buries some leads here and there. And I'm sure he doesn't always know perfectly what's going to happen, but he knows the rough layout, and he knows how he's going to get there a lot of the time, and it really feels well planned. In these flashback scenes where everything's a little the pale kind of filter over everything, washed out, I guess. I'll show some art here because I've been talking about narrative. I really have a problem talking about the art because it's just so functional. Although the designs are really cool and the artwork is beautiful to look at, the story is just so all-encompassing, and it overtakes every other element of this comic. It is a comic, so it does have a lot of parts that aren't just the story, but Frank Martin, Russ Wooten, Nick Dragotta, they're in service of Jonathan Hickman's grand plan. And that's really what this is all about, is this huge, sprawling tale of a sci-fi western. And that's pretty much all I want to say, because in the previous attempts at this video, I tried to cover story, but really all you need to know is the apocalypse is coming. There are those who want it to happen. There are those who don't. There's high tensions running through the nations of the country, and shit's gonna hit the fan so soon. It's always so imminent, but it never fully reaches what you think of as the apocalypse. Like, a war is about to break out. It could end everything, but is that the apocalypse? I don't know if it is. And there's almost like mini apocalypse that happen throughout this book. And it's really great. I would recommend it wholeheartedly. There's really not a book I've read, as I said, there's not a book like this that I've read that kind of gets to the level of almost intensity that this story gets to. Here's where I'm going to spoil some stuff. So if you're worried about spoilers, maybe cut out now, because I'm going to get a little deeper into the ending. I'm not going to say what happens. I'm just going to say my thoughts on it, which will spoil some stuff. And I have questions. So if you've read the book, you know at the start the horsemen are being reborn, resurrected, because they tried to kill Death, and Death killed all of them. And Death didn't die, so he's not there. But they expect him to be there, right? So why at the end, when all four horsemen are dead, don't they resurrect? It's my biggest question at the end. Everything's tied up with a little bow, but it doesn't make a ton of sense to me, because in the end, there's no answer as to why the cyclical nature of things stops. Why is the end the end? I want to know, because you've set up a path where things are just going to keep happening how they've always happened. These horsemen should be reborn and pursue yet another apocalypse, because the apocalypse at the end of this book, as you know, or as you don't care if you haven't read or have read, it's not a true apocalypse, which I think worked really well for me, because everything's so taken up to 11 in this story that when the apocalypse happens, and it's not the world on fire, it's really just the world of these characters and these nations ending and being reborn into something new. That works for me, because that's subversive, I think. But I just want to know, you've established rules. Jonathan Hickman has established rules, and I think he breaks them. And I don't think he explained enough away. I think a lot of the problems I have with the ending could be explained away in one line. One line for each problem I have, and there's only 2 or 3, and you solved it. I also want to know why the 4 horsemen, or the 3 horsemen really, took Babylon, if they're just going to throw him away at the end and use him. They're using him as a bargaining chip, but then they just throw it away and attack Death just the same way they did it the first time, and it didn't work. So why do they do it the same way and fail again? I have questions there. I think one issue, 2, 3 issues, even one more issue could have done this. 2, 3 issues would have made it cleaner, but one more issue could have explained away a lot of the stuff that I have questions about. I think he tried to wrap it up a little too quick, and it's a 45-issue series, so it wasn't quick by any means, but I think the snowball effect just got a little too strong, and things started wrapping up too fast and too neatly, but it wasn't an earned neatness. It wasn't what it could have been. And having that, being said, I don't think, it sounds like I don't like the ending. I enjoy the ending a lot. I think it's great that it even got an ending. A lot of stories like this, they don't even get their endings, especially Jonathan Hickman. He doesn't finish a lot of his books. So I'm glad we even got one, and I really enjoyed it, and it didn't tarnish my love for the series. I think it's a great series. One of the most unique books in my collection, and it's so awesome. It's so arch. It's so very arch and over the top in everything it does, but it works so well. It's so clean. It's not edgy like you expect it to be when I say stuff like that. But yeah, I have some questions. I want to know why the Oracle was kind of a Deus Ex Machina, and she shows up and she disappears. In one panel she's there, the next panel she's not. Never explained. Yeah. If you guys have answers to that stuff, please. I'm literally asking you in the comments if you know. Me and my friend who also read the series with me, we went through the whole thing, and there's no answer to the resurrection thing. Like, I don't think there is an answer as to why they don't come back. But could a writer have finished this series and done the finale and had it been cleaner? Yes. Someone extremely thorough, it wouldn't be Alan Moore, but get Alan Moore, get Grant Morrison's not a great example. Get the best, your favorite writer. He might be able to tie this together in a nice little bow at the end. Everything is so coherent, it makes a lot of sense. There's no loose threads. Sure, maybe that's possible. It wouldn't be nearly as cool as what Hickman did, because Hickman does the coolest stuff. That's what he does. It wouldn't have been this epic, this over-the-top, and awesome, and it's a sight to behold, really. It wouldn't be like that if everything was done perfectly and all the little rules were written out for you and you could read them all, you could go. That makes a lot of sense. It wouldn't work in the same way that it does, and although I have problems with the ending, I love the ending. I think it works the way the rest of the book works, where it's not perfect, it's not all fully explained, but the feeling of it and the intensity of it is there, and it makes a lot of sense in its own way. I don't know if I'm saying that right, and I'm repeating myself, but I actually do love the ending, even though I have a ton of problems and questions about it. It didn't spoil the book for me at all, and I thought it was awesome. And Hickman's little one-liners, even on the back of the book, I think. His little one-liners, they work for me. And everything's just... yeah, it's all so epic. I don't know. I've used that word 1,000 times, but it's the word for the book. It really is. Dragotta's art was just beautiful. Just really, really something else. Completely manga influenced, but Frank Martin's colors on top just brought it all together into something you'd expect from Image, but still so unique in its own way. Yeah, it was great. I'm trying to find, here's some black and white art with more screen tone than you really notice in the actual book. That manga influence shining through. But I wonder if we get the world stuff in this book. Yeah, we get like a whole timeline because Hickman loves infographics. We get like breakdowns of the nations, so the Union, the Confederate, the Republic, the Nation, which is just a great name for a nation, the Kingdom, Armistice, and the People's Republic. And then you get like a stat breakdown, like a who's who for all this stuff, gamified almost. Yeah, I mean, the world building is awesome in this book, which I barely even covered, but I've been rambling now. We're almost going on the length of the other previous attempts where I fizzled out and just tried to convey the whole story. But if you're going to take anything away from this video, read this series. It's 100% worth it. I really, really love it. It's one of my favorite things. It has been since I started reading comics. I've just never finished it, and it still is even after. It's just one of the most epic long runs of comics that I've ever read. If you have anything that you think is this operatic, this on this scale, just a huge epic, I'm saying that in the term of the genre now, not like a way of describing it. Just a long running series with a bunch of, huge plot, big cast, just an opera. Let me know, because I'm really into that. It was a really rewarding experience to read a book like this. So let me know in the comments if you have read this. I really want to know what you thought about the ending, and maybe you can help me get some answers. Maybe. But thanks for watching, guys. Peace.